Good evening, good morning, YouTube. Salutations, wherever you're at. So recently I was tagged by JJ, JJ the Bookworm Blacksmith. I want to make sure I didn't get it backwards, like say Blacksmith Bookworm. But I will link and tag her in the description. It was really kind of her to tag me in it. I think this is a pretty cool tag. This is the Filmtasic February tag. The original creator of this, I'm sorry, bear with me one moment, please. I want to say it was Duncan at Back Away from the Donkey, which is a fantastic handle. Like, I see your right name. So, I don't know where you got that from. I'm not as familiar with this channel. I'll have to check it out, though. So I'll definitely give him a watch. So this, it's largely about, like, films and stuff and kind of books related to films. And I thought this was actually a pretty fun one. So I'll go ahead and just go over this. It's your first memory of seeing a film at the cinema. So this one was kind of tough for me because I remember I think the first movie I ever saw in movie theaters was The Lost World, Jurassic Park. This video is going to take some editing because I don't own any DVDs. So I'll put that up there. But I also remember being really excited to see Pokemon the movie when I was a kid. So I'm a millennial. And I remember when that came out in theaters, they gave you a Pokemon card at the theater. It was amazing. It was a Dragonite. So I think it was holographic too. So anyway, some nostalgia. I will also mention this though, and this isn't going to the cinema, but I remember video rental stores. And I remember my grandma taking me when I was a kid, and there was the Transformers, the animated movie, and my grandma must have rented that thing for me 30 times at least. I watched that movie so many times. It's Transformers. It's the 80s animated movie. And of course, Optimus Prime dies in that. And that was tragic to me as a kid. I couldn't believe it. My mind was blown when Optimus Prime died. I just couldn't believe it. To this day, it's like a traumatic experience for me. You want to talk about subverting expectations. Anyway. So the number 2 is, a book about a film. It can be behind the scenes, an autobiography, a work of fiction, that includes a film as a main subject. This one was a little bit tougher because I don't think I've read a ton of books about films, but I do remember the Dark Knight trilogy, the making of the Dark Knight trilogy, which is a nonfiction book. I remember when that came out. I remember just being blown away by that. I was really into the Dark Knight trilogy, especially the Dark Knight. Like, that just came out at like such a formative age for me. Like, I was a teenager. I love The Dark Knight. I've seen The Dark Knight so many times. I like The Dark Knight, right? I like all 3 of them. Batman Begins. That was my trilogy growing up. So I know a lot of people Star Wars, but like for me, it was The Dark Knight trilogy. But I just remember being fascinated by that book. Because Christopher Nolan used a lot of practical effects and stuff. And then, of course, Heath Ledger would die tragically shortly after the making of The Dark Knight. So, of course, he wasn't in the third one. And there was just a lot of interesting stuff about that. Stuff about Aaron Eckhart, who played Two-Face in the second one. I think they should have retconned it and brought him back, if you ask me. But anyway, that was a really good one. There was another book. I'll save this for a minute, because I'm going to mention another one. So number 3, a novelization or book or tie-in book. So this one might be a little odd. So anyway, some people might probably know this by now, but I have a welding background and I used to work on pipe. So I used to go out of state. And that's kind of where reading really cemented for me, because when I'd be up in like Montana or like Idaho, and there was, you'd be in the middle of nowhere with nothing to do. Like there, might be like a small town nearby. So I spent a lot of time reading. So, and that's one of the things I actually didn't like about the job. So you live in these trailers a lot of the time. They set up for you, and a lot of times it was a free place to live, or at least not very much. But they almost kind of were like little company towns. I don't know. That part of it I didn't like. But anyway, I think I was in a hotel when I found this. It was The Game by Jeff Rovin. And it really stuck with me. To this day, I remember this book so well. And I think when I picked it up, I didn't even realize it was a novelization. I don't think I had seen the movie. I watched the movie afterwards. But I was just I just remember being riveted to this book. It was such a fascinating story. And probably no one's ever read this book. I guess some people did, because I found it randomly at a hotel. But But it's just such a. I highly recommend it. Whether you've seen the movie or not, I would recommend this book. It's all like the storyline is very similar to like an escape room, and I've actually heard of people doing this type too, where it's like the escape room is brought to you, right? And there's just like all these like, it's all about like basically finding this MacGuffin, and throughout the story, it's like it starts to mess with his head. It's like a psychological thriller, so it starts to mess with his head because it's like people in his everyday life, like his wife and stuff, are involved with this game, and it's like it's been going on for years, even though it was supposedly just started during the time, during your time reading the book, like and the characters, time, like it just started a couple of days ago, but all of a sudden there's all this stuff that's been supposedly going on for his whole life now, kind of like if you were like on Ed TV or the Truman Show, and you just all of a sudden realized, oh, my life is fake. So it's kind of like that, except better. I think it's way better than those. It's a really good book. Like I to this day, I need to pick it up and read it again because I remember really enjoying. I read it more than once, so and it just really stuck with me. I'll never forget that. I just remember loving that book because I remember recognizing the cover to it. I don't remember the actor's name. I'm not really. I used to like movies a lot more. I don't really watch them that much anymore. I said Martin Sheen. I can't remember. I can't remember but I remember recognizing the cover of it as the like a movie poster because it was like the puzzle pieces of the character coming apart and stuff. So it was a really striking cover. But yeah, I remember really liking that book. Anyway, a film that brings back fond memories. Well, I'm going to mention The Dark Knight because I just love that movie. And I remember actually, I think I was working at the time. I had like a part-time job. And like me, my partner, my significant other at the time, and then a friend. So yeah, it was like a group of friends. We all went and seen The Dark Knight at like a really late showing at like 11 at night. I'll just never forget that. And because we got there a little late, we were like in the front row, so we were sitting there with our necks cranked up like that. I remember my neck hurting afterwards, but I still I watched the whole movie. And I've always like been big about like showering right when I get off work. And I remember then not showering, like I went straight in my work uniform and everything. I was so excited. It was the day the movie came out. So, there's a few others in there, like obviously Star Wars. The prequel trilogy was really big for me because that was kind of my time frame, my age group. And I don't know why I wrote this one down, but I put A Bug's Life. I remember loving that movie as a kid. I just loved A Bug's Life. I remember that I had the video game and everything, and I loved A Bug's Life when I was a kid. But I don't know why I wrote that down. It just brings back nostalgia, I guess. I don't know. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was a big one for me too. I remember watching The Secret of the Ooze. Like, God, I must have watched that movie 50 times. It's ridiculous. Something else JJ said in her video, she mentioned, and I agree, like, I'm actually a little more into TV shows than movies, so a lot of my answers here are going to be about TV shows. They're coming up. I actually have these questions backwards, but it's too late now. A film about writers or writing. So, this is actually my first one. It's going to be a TV show, so I cheated a little bit. I put The Wire season 5. If you've never seen The Wire, it's a fantastic TV show. It's an HBO show. It's essentially about Baltimore, but it's largely about like drugs and just crime in Baltimore, but like drug dealers and stuff play a big role in it, and kind of that street life. And I think Wire did a good job of walking that line too, of not glorifying it while also portraying it in an accurate way. But anyway, so each season builds up, right? First season's really street level. The second season's like these union shipyard guys and the kind of the collapse of the like manufacturing industry in Baltimore and kind of losing those middle class jobs and stuff. And then third season kind of goes a little bit back and it progresses, right? And eventually you get into like the city government and stuff. And then like the last season is like journalism and news. Right, and kind of like, and it's such a fantastic season of television, and it's kind of a big part of it is like how the news, what you read in the news and how your information is portrayed to you and how it affects you. There's a subplot all throughout season 5 of a journalist. He gets a prize for some it's not a Pulitzer, but some kind of writing prize or recognition, and I can't recall if he earns it morally the first time, but like it doesn't matter because after that he loses all of his morals because all he can think about is trying to do that again. So he ends up, kind of making fake news and kind of creating, it starts with kind of him just blowing stories up, kind of exaggerating them. And then there's like this whole fake serial killer storyline, and then he plays along with it because it's drawing so much attention. It's just a fantastic season of television. The entire show is absolutely excellent. It's one of my 3 favorite TV shows ever. Like, I would recommend it to anybody. It is phenomenal. I'm serious. David Milch is brilliant. So, not David Milch. I'm sorry. David Milch wrote Deadwood. I forget who wrote Wire off the top of my head. I'll put the name in here. Yeah, David Milch wrote Deadwood. Deadwood's brilliant too. Anyway, television is more of a writer's medium anyway than movies are. Movies are really largely about the directors and stuff. So, anyway, a film that made you want to read the book. I did cheat a little bit here because I wrote a few of them. Oh yeah, this a film that made you want to read the book. So, I put LA Confidential here, which I have this here. I've been wanting an excuse to talk about this book. I think this is a fantastic book. This isn't really my genre, like crime noir, crime fiction. This book is incredibly good. I highly recommend this. And this book has a bit of an interesting story to it, too, because when James Ellroy wrote this, the editor said it was too long and they wanted him to trim it down. And instead of like taking out any of the plot, he actually went through a lot, like sentence line by line and just like looked for words and stuff he could erase out of it. So, removed a lot of adverbs, used a lot of conjunctions. I think it's brilliant. I think this is a fantastic book. Definitely check this out. There was another one I wrote here because it's a film that made me want to read the book. I also put The Leftovers on here, which is also an HBO TV show. I didn't like the book as much, but the show is fantastic. The Leftovers is a brilliant TV show made by the same guy who made Lost. Excellent. Absolutely excellent. Check out The Leftovers. I highly recommend it. And then I also wrote The Expanse on here. So I watched the TV show first of The Expanse, which is a science fiction, kind of a hard sci-fi show. And what I really liked about The Expanse is it was like distant future, but not like super distant future. Maybe like a couple hundred years from now, and humans have started to colonize on Mars and the moon, and up as far as like the asteroid belt. And I thought they did a really good job of it because there's a lot of clever ways they do like kind of world building, right? Like basically all the humans that don't live off Earth have grown taller because of the lower gravity, and then like they kind of mix like languages and accents, and it's just really and ethnicities, and it's really interesting how they did that. And so I always thought The Expanse was really good. I never read the whole series, but I read like the first 3 or 4 books. Sci-fi's not really my genre. I'll read it. Like I love Dune. I really like The Expanse. John Carter of Mars. So I'll read sci-fi. I like Carl Sagan. So I'll read sci-fi, but it's just not like my go-to genre. So the next one is a book that made you want to watch the film. So this kind of brings me back too. So I remember hearing hype about the Game of Thrones TV show coming out, and I started reading the books before it came out. Someone might even have mentioned it to me. So I remember reading the first book and just loving it, and then the show started running. I watched season 1 of Game of Thrones, and I loved it. I was hooked. I've been a fan of George R. R. Martin since. So, like I've read his Dunk and Egg series, I've read a bunch of his short stories, and a whole bunch of his other stuff too. I like his works. I liked his stuff so much. But anyway, I would go on to read the entire book series more than once. So, and then George R. R. Martin mentions another series called The Accursed Kings. And I would go and I would read that too. So that's a historical fiction series. I highly recommend that too. Cursed Kings is fantastic. I definitely recommend that. It takes place like right before the 100 Years' War. Starts with Philip the Fair and his kind of his trial of the Knights Templar and how he dismantles the Knights Templar, and he kind of does it on sort of rocky ground. Like he kind of just makes up reasons because he just wants their money. So anyway. I feel like there was others here. I guess I could mention The Godfather too, because I remember watching The Godfather and wanting to read the book. I used to do this a lot, actually. I remember not liking The Godfather book, though. It was not as good as the movie. And then I did the same thing with The Prestige, which is a Christopher Nolan movie, which I did like that book. But I definitely recommend The Prestige if you've never seen it. I should have wrote that on my movies. Because I want to talk about, I'll have to cut out a little bit right there. Films based on a book that bear no resemblance to the source. Oh, I actually put The Leftovers here. So I wrote a couple ones down. The Prestige is one too. The book is so different than the movie. Like they're not even close. I like both for different reasons, but I would give the movie an edge on that. But the Prestige book is good too. And then I wrote Jurassic Park because they changed so much. But I'm gonna put. I do want to mention Jurassic Park though because I remember being in school. There used to be this thing called AR Reader in school. I don't know if anyone else did this, but it was on the computer. Basically, what you had to do, so you'd have to get so many what they called AR points, and books were worth points, right? And they were worth more points the bigger the book was. And I remember going through that list, and I started trying to do it with small books, and I was like, dang, these bigger books are worth so much points. I remember Jurassic Park being worth a bunch of points. I was like, I watched that. I like that movie. So I went. I was thinking I could skim because in my child mind, I was like, well, maybe I could just skim through it and I can go take this test. But I remember starting to read it and it being so different. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm not gonna be able to get away with that. So, but I read the book. I remember really enjoying it. So I would go on to read more Michael Crichton. So Michael Crichton was one of the first authors. He was among those first authors I kind of was like interested in that, like in an author. Like so, it was like I've talked about this so many ad nauseum now. But Louis L'Amour, Zane Grey, and I was really into Michael Crichton at first. So anyway, and then the last one is recommend 5 films. So I put True Grit, The Assassination of Jesse James. I put some TV shows here too. The Leftovers, Deadwood, Tombstone. I feel like there was another one I was going to say. Well, I'll recommend The Expanse too because that's a really good TV show. I said The Leftovers, Deadwood. Those are both TV shows. So is The Expanse, but all of them are excellent, man. Absolutely all of them. Tombstone is one of my favorite movies of all time. I feel like there was going to be another one I was going to say. I guess I didn't say it, so I didn't write it down. Anyway, I thought this was a really fun tag. I think novelizations are really interesting. I don't know. Do they still make those? There's a lot of good ones out there. Revenge of the Sith is a really good novelization. I've always been really fascinated by them. I remember reading the Dark Knight novelization and really enjoying that. I think the Dark Knight Rises novelization is it's really good, man. It is really good. So definitely check all those out. But anyway, that's all for today, YouTube. Good night, good day, wherever you're at.